The polished glass walls of the Boston law firm reflected the tension in the air. Elena Morgan, 31, sat quietly at the long mahogany table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The faint hum of the air conditioner did little to cool the nervous heat crawling up her neck. Across from her, her mother Margaret paced impatiently, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Beside Margaret sat Caleb, Elena's younger brother and the family's so-called golden child. His designer watch gleamed as he scrolled through his phone, barely glancing at his sister. Margaret paused, leaned close to Caleb, and whispered, loud enough for Elena to hear. "Soon, sweetheart, you'll finally get what you deserve. A fresh start. A real life." Elena kept her gaze lowered, refusing to react. She had spent 3 long years caring for her grandmother, Evelyn, visiting her every week, listening to her stories, and helping her with paperwork no one else bothered to touch. She knew things her family didn't, things Evelyn had entrusted only to her. The heavy oak doors opened, and 2 attorneys stepped inside, carrying leather briefcases. The room stilled. Caleb straightened in his chair, a faint grin tugging at his lips, while Margaret adjusted her pearl necklace, radiating confidence. Elena drew a slow, steady breath, her heartbeat loud in her ears. They believed today would secure their future, the house, the jewelry, the savings. They didn't know Evelyn had plans none of them could have predicted. Margaret leaned toward Elena and whispered with a mocking smile, "Don't look so worried, dear. Some of us were born to succeed." Elena finally lifted her eyes, meeting her mother's gaze with calm determination. If only they knew what was coming. The soft rustle of papers filled the room as Mr. Coleman, the lead attorney, adjusted his glasses and began reading aloud. According to the last will and testament of Evelyn Grace Morgan, the family house and all personal jewelry shall be inherited by Caleb Morgan. Margaret let out a sharp gasp of satisfaction, her lips curling into a triumphant smile. Caleb's phone dropped onto the table as he turned to his sister with a smug grin. "Guess Grandma finally knew who deserved it," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. Margaret placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder and whispered, "See, sweetheart, hard work pays off." Elena sat still, her face unreadable, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Then, just as Caleb began fantasizing aloud about renovating the property, the door opened again. A second attorney, Ms. Whitaker, entered carrying a sleek black folder. Her expression was calm, but the weight she carried shifted the entire energy of the room. "I apologize for the interruption," she said, taking a seat beside Mr. Coleman. "But there are additional documents related to Mrs. Evelyn Morgan's estate, documents not covered by the standard will." Margaret frowned. "What additional documents?" "The house and jewelry, that's everything." Ms. Whitaker's gaze met Elena's briefly before she spoke. "Not quite. Mrs. Morgan also owned controlling shares in 5 privately held businesses, including a thriving real estate group, a catering chain, and a technology firm. The total value of these assets, based on current appraisals, is approximately $12.3 million. The room went silent. Margaret blinked, stunned. Caleb's confident smile faltered. Then Ms. Whitaker unfolded the final paper and read clearly. "Effective immediately, Elena Morgan is the designated successor and sole trustee of all corporate holdings." Elena raised her head slowly, her calm gaze meeting theirs. Her voice, steady but soft, broke the silence. "I told Grandma I'd protect her legacy, and I will." Margaret shot up from her chair, so quickly it scraped against the floor, her voice rising like a storm. "This is manipulation. You tricked her, Elena. You poisoned her against her own family." Her words cut through the room, sharp and bitter. Caleb slammed his phone onto the table and leaned forward, his face red with anger. "This is insane," he hissed. "You can't just take everything. I'm her grandson. I deserve my share." Mr. Coleman, the attorney, remained composed, tapping a single document on the table. Before we proceed, there's something you should both know. He slid a set of papers toward Caleb. The house and jewelry you inherited, Mr. Morgan, unfortunately, they're tied up in multiple creditor claims. Caleb frowned, confused. What claims? That's our property. Ms. Whitaker spoke calmly, her tone firm. Your mother's outstanding gambling debts have resulted in lawsuits from several casinos and lending institutions. Legally, these assets must be liquidated to settle those obligations. Caleb froze, staring at his mother in disbelief. Mom, what are they talking about? Margaret's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but Ms. Whitaker continued, laying down photographic evidence, transaction reports, and surveillance records showing years of secret visits to high-end casinos. Grandma Evelyn had anticipated this exact scenario. She had planned every detail with precision, ensuring the fortune would never fall into Margaret's hands. The room fell into a tense silence. Caleb sank back into his chair, his confidence shattered. So, I get nothing? He whispered. Elena sat quietly, her hands resting on her lap, her expression calm. In her mind, she could almost hear Evelyn's gentle voice from those long evenings at the kitchen table, sipping tea and reviewing contracts together. Respect builds wealth. Entitlement destroys it. Elena exhaled slowly. The storm was far from over, but Evelyn had prepared her for this moment. Weeks passed, but the weight of that day in the conference room lingered like an echo. The story had spread quickly, headlines flashing across business journals and social media. Quiet granddaughter inherits $12 million empire. For the first time, Elena Morgan stepped into the spotlight, not by choice but by necessity. She spent her mornings in sleek boardrooms, meeting with executives of Evelyn's companies, reviewing plans, and signing documents her grandmother had once carefully explained to her. Every detail Evelyn had taught her, from managing contracts to analyzing financial reports, now guided her decisions. Meanwhile, the fallout from Margaret and Caleb was brutal. Margaret was forced to file for bankruptcy, her years of hidden casino debts finally exposed. The lavish image she had worked so hard to maintain collapsed overnight. Caleb, stripped of his golden child reputation, watched his social circle vanish as news of their financial ruin spread. Elena didn't celebrate their downfall. This wasn't about revenge. It was about Evelyn's plan, about protecting what she had built with quiet determination over decades. One crisp afternoon, Elena called a press conference. To everyone's surprise, she announced the creation of the Evelyn Morgan Foundation, a program designed to help families struggling with debt, giving them the second chance a grandmother had once wished for her own daughter. Reporters flooded her with questions, but Elena kept her answers simple. This is about honoring Evelyn's values. Success isn't just measured in wealth. It's measured in what we choose to do with it. That evening, she visited Evelyn's old house one last time. The front porch creaked beneath her feet, the air filled with memories of late-night talks and warm chamomile tea. Standing there quietly, Elena whispered into the soft breeze. I hope you're proud, Grandma. I'll protect what you built. For the first time in her life, Elena didn't feel invisible. She felt ready. What would you do if you were in Elena's place? Broken heart, would you forgive your family? Or would you let them face the consequences of their choices? Do you believe Evelyn's plan was fair or too harsh? Tell me your thoughts below in the comments. I read every single one of them. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more emotional stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Red Heart.